Hey, welcome back to my Facebook Lives every day at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can join me here live and get some free value, motivation, information, some great tips on how to build your business, how to succeed in business while winning at home. That's what I'm all about, is helping you to build your business, to make more money, and do it in less time. So today, what I want to talk about is one of my personal heroes. And if he's listening, I doubt he is. I hope he is. I leave a comment down below. And his name is Jon Acuff. Jon Acuff, please, I would love to contact with you. Anybody that can put me in contact with Jon Acuff would be great. Anyhow, Jon Acuff is an author. He lives out in Tennessee. He's absolutely marvelous and fantastic. And I love everything that he does. But I wanted to share with you guys a book that you absolutely have to read. I have it right here. The book that you have to read is Soundtracks. Jon Acuff, Soundtracks. Let's see if that. There you go. Jon Acuff, Soundtracks. This is it's the surprising solution to overthinking. If you are an entrepreneur, if you are, even if you're not, listen, guys, this is just for anybody. This is for anybody who's willing to take a minute to stop by. By the way, if you're joining me live, give me a hashtag live down below. If you're joining this on a replay, give me a hashtag replay. The point is, this book is fantastic. Now, why is this book so spectacular? The reason why is because something that we know about the brain is well, let me just back up just a second. First of all, Jon Acuff does a lot of research, but he writes in a way that is so accessible to everybody, to anybody. And that's why I really love it, because it's not just, there's a lot of science behind what he's writing, but it's not just a bunch of science jargon. He's really making it accessible. And the science here is that, really, to boil it down into one statement, it's what we believe is what we become. If our subconscious believes that we're only worthy of so much, or that we can only do so much, then that's really the way it is. That's how life is. For us, and that's because of our subconscious. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's hooey, but there's actually a lot of science that backs this up, that our brain doesn't know the difference between reality and something that was cooked up in our mind, in our brain, the imagination, basically. So if we imagine that something is impossible, then our brain thinks it's impossible, then it becomes impossible. If our brain thinks something is possible, then it becomes possible because we believe it's possible. So Soundtracks really is a great way. He says it's the solution to overthinking. And what this book really goes into, this Soundtracks by Jon Acuff, is ways that we can reprogram our brain using the soundtracks in our brain. And what he means by soundtracks is, when you think of, like, for example, a movie, right? We all have famous soundtracks, like, da 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 da. Okay, that's horrible. That's The Godfather. Sorry for those of you who couldn't figure that out. I'm not even going to attempt to do another one. But we know, like, there's two notes, right? Two notes that everybody recognizes. I'll give you this one. I'll try this one. Da dum. Right? That's Jaws, right? Da dum da dum da dum da dum. Soundtrack. Soundtracks are so important. They give context. They give meaning to what we're viewing. They help us to identify the appropriate emotion, to connect with the movie. But they play in the background. They're not really out there. I mean, sometimes they are, but a lot of times they're just in the background. And then when we hear it, then we immediately start thinking of scenes from that movie. We don't necessarily think of the music itself. We're not picturing a score. We're picturing scenes from that movie. So the soundtracks that play in our minds are so important because they're playing in the background. And what he means by soundtracks, and so what I'm talking about here, are the things that we say to ourselves. It's our self-talk, the things we say to ourselves every day, every hour, every minute of every day. Whenever a situation arises, how do we respond to it? It's often due to the programming that's going on from the soundtrack that's playing in the background. That's what gives us the emotional context of how to respond, how to act, and we can respond. And sometimes we respond and it becomes a habit because that's the soundtrack that keeps playing. We respond with fear when something new comes up, a challenge or something new, because the soundtrack that's playing is that scary. It's, that you've never done that before and you might get hurt and all of those things. So the thing is with our soundtracks, we become what we believe. And so our subconscious needs to be pushed uphill, or else it will naturally run downhill. In other words, we need to be programming our subconscious to the positive. Otherwise, it naturally reaches for the negative. Now, why is this? The interesting thing, again, he goes in here, is because of our brains being programmed to look for negative things, right? The caveman that went frolicking through the field with a positive mind, guys, a tiger will never get me. We usually got eaten by the tiger. The ones that looked at a field and went, okay, there's a tiger. I'm looking for the danger. Those are the ones that survived, and the ones that survived got to breed, and the ones that got to breed passed on that survival instinct, right? And if any of their kids were dumb enough to go frolic in a field of tigers, they got eaten. So they didn't pass on their genetic material, nor did they pass on their traditions, their heritage, their thinking, their way of life. And all of that comes down through generations. And listen, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to try to start a conversation here about creationism versus evolution, all that stuff. What I'm saying is that the human race, since its inception, has always had to look for danger until life became so easy, what we have today. I mean, it really is easy. We don't, you can walk out your front door and not have to worry about raiders coming over the hill, tigers trying to jump out of the bushes, or anything like that, right? Life is easy, but our brain still looks for the negative. It still looks for what could go wrong. It still looks for the bad. And in doing so, it oftentimes becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we have to reprogram our unconscious. And of course, Jon gives some spectacular ways to do that. He gives what's called the new anthem in there for you to repeat. I actually have a soundtracks journal, a notebook that I carry with me. And yes, I actually carry two notebooks. I carry one that is my thoughts, and then one that's my soundtracks journal. And this allows me to read throughout the day. If I have just a few minutes of, sitting to waiting to get the oil change for the car, or at a doctor's office waiting in the waiting room, I can pull out my soundtracks journal and reread the positive messages there to help program. I also read them during the day, and then I read them before I go to bed. I definitely do it twice a day, first thing in the morning, right before I go to bed, because as our brains are waking up and as our brains are going to sleep, that's the best time to try to program them. That's when we have the most neuroplasticity. So I definitely do it then. And then throughout the day, I do it just as a continuous reminder. So that's something that he talks about. Changing our soundtracks will change our lives. So I firmly believe this, and I'll tell you why, because I wouldn't be here today if a soundtrack hadn't changed in my life. So some of you have heard this story, and I apologize for telling it again, but it's impactful to me, and it reminds me to continue to always look to grow up. And it really has, it did change my life. It's changed my family's life. When I was told I would never work again, I survived testicular cancer. And then 4 years later, due to medication from that, I suffered a heart attack at the age of 30. I lost 40% of my kidney function. I was told I would never work again as we were going through the process of applying for disability. I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease. This is all on top of the low testosterone that I had from the testicular cancer and the type 1 diabetes that I've had since I was 11. And so life was really, it was kind of a bummer, but I was going through, we were applying for disability. And when we got in there, we finally, it took years, finally got in front of a judge. And there's the judge, there's me, there's the vocational witness, and there's the medical witness. And those guys' jobs, their two jobs, the vocational and medical witness, is basically to try to dispute anything that I'm saying, to testify on behalf of the Social Security Administration so that they don't have to pay me disability. And then the judge's job is to determine that. So we're sitting there, me, my attorney, these two, and the judge. And she asked me, please tell me about what you have. Tell me how it affects your day, why you feel that, what goes on in your day that makes you think that you wouldn't be able to work. So I go through and I explain all these things, how it affects my day, all of this stuff. And she, after listening to me, she says, okay, thank you. And she says, turns to the medical witness. She says, is there anything you'd like to to add. Now, this is his chance to jump in and say, well, no, Josh is exaggerating or he's lying, or he just simply turns, he says, no, Your Honor, there's nothing to add. Everything Mr. Hull has said is correct, and everything and the way it would affect him is exactly as he said. So great. I mean, I didn't worry about that because I'm an honest guy, integrity, right? I'm not going to exaggerate what's going on. He validated that. All right. Okay. Now we turn to the vocational expert or witness. And she's sitting there, she's got her computer, and the judge asks her a series of questions. Can somebody, she doesn't say Mr. Hall, but could somebody with this situation, with these things, do this and this and this? And what she's doing is she's looking at my work history, and she's looking at a database of all the different, it's running through an algorithm, AI basically at that time, to determine if there's anything in the world, anything that I could do, anything in the United States database of employment that I would be qualified to do with those specific health issues, with the things going on, the way it affects my day, all of that stuff. So she's going through, she's typing stuff in, and there could anybody with these situations, XYZ, do what Mr. Hull was doing prior to not working, which was being a law enforcement officer. And of course, she click. No, Your Honor, no one with those conditions could be a law enforcement officer. Well, we knew that. Okay. Anybody with conditions could anybody do anything in Mr. Hull's employment history? Now, I'd been a telemarketer. I'd done a lot of things that were sedentary in my life. And this is where my attorney was like, well, she might say, well, he could be a telemarketer. Even though there's no telemarketing firm where I live, she could say that, at which point, it might invalidate me for disability because, well, there is a job you could do. And he says, but don't worry, that's my job as the attorney to whittle it down and convince the judge basically that you can't. Okay, whatever. So she says, no, Your Honor, there's, with the things that, that a person that has would not be qualified to do anything in Mr. Hull's work history. So my attorney and I kind of look at each other like, oh, wow, well, that was the hurdle. All right, well, here's the next one. Here's the biggie. This is the anything in the United States database of employment. This is any job that they have thought of to put into this database. And there's a lot of jobs out there. So the judge asks a question, and she types and she says, Your Honor, there is nothing in the United States database that Mr. Hull would be qualified to do. So the judge turns to my attorney and says, would you like to add anything? And he said, not without muddying the water, Your Honor, we're good. She says, okay. And they don't tell you right there. It takes about 6 months to write a decision. She says, okay, well, thank you for your time and we'll let you know. And we walk out. And my attorney is skipping down the hall. I mean, he's like a kid that just robbed the candy store and got everything. He's excited. And I'm shuffling down the hall, and he comes back, he says, I've never seen anything like that. Now, my wife, Mindy, she's waiting for me, and she comes up, she says, what happened? And he says, I have never in 11 years of practicing disability law seen the two witnesses for the Social Security basically testify on behalf of my client. He says, you understand, that's like the star witness for the prosecution testifying on behalf of the accused murderer to get them off. Like, that's huge. And that's huge. That's great. And we drove home, and it was a 2-hour drive from Salt Lake to where we live. And my wife drove, and I was crushed. I was devastated. Today, thinking about it, those emotions and feelings come flooding back. I was basically just told as I sat there, the thought came to my mind. You were basically just told the only reason for you to keep breathing, the only reason, is to hopefully get a check that's less than a third of what your monthly income was, so that your wife, who's supporting the family after losing 55% of your income, so that your wife might have a little bit of financial reprieve. Very little. I was worthless. Well, because that was my soundtrack, my health actually got worse. I didn't get any new diseases or have anything else happen. Just what was currently going on in my life, my brain let my body get worse. My health declined. I could barely get out of bed. I was approved for disability eventually, and I could barely get out of bed. I was barely engaged in taking care of our children while my wife went to work. I kept them alive and I kept them clean, and that was about it. I didn't do any of the household chores like I was doing. I didn't help out. I didn't engage with my kids. I simply was existing. And it wasn't until the soundtrack changed in my mind, when instead of saying there's nothing out there, the soundtrack became there's got to be something out there. There's got to be one thing. People are making money online all over the place, making millions. There's got to be one thing I can do. And the very next day, I saw on Facebook a friend posting for help for somebody that could work from home. I called him up. I said, can I do this? He says, all you need is I said, could I do this from my bed? And he says, all you need is an internet connection, a laptop, and a cell phone. I had those 3 things. And I helped him grow his business to 6 figures. And then my mindset began to change, but it started with that one soundtrack, that one thought. Instead of there's nothing to there's got to be something. And from there, my health has improved. I no longer take medication for Parkinson's. My kidney function has improved. My heart has improved. My diabetes control has improved. I'm engaging with my children. I stopped existing and I started living. I found success in business while winning at home. And that is what this book is about. That is why I love it. And I'm so passionate about soundtracks, because even though I didn't read it until after I'd had my shift, it reaffirmed what I already knew. And it gave me a few new tools to add to my arsenal, because you know what? Limiting beliefs don't go away. I'm sorry, but they just don't. They hide out. They might hide for a while. You might be able to push them to the background, but they'll come back, and you need as many tools in your tool belt to push them back and to get over them and get past them and beyond them and to defeat them. So I absolutely recommend go out and buy Soundtracks by Jon Acuff. Read Soundtracks by Jon Acuff. And if you like this, leave a comment, like, share, and comment on this video. Let me know. If you're watching this on replay, give me a hashtag replay. If you caught it live, give me a hashtag live. Leave your comments. I will get back to them. If you've been making comments, I've been ignoring them because otherwise I'll get sidetracked. And this has already been long enough as it is. Thank you for joining me today. Change your story. Change your life. Change your soundtrack. Change your life. I promise you it works. If it could work for me, it most certainly can and will work for you. See you guys later. Like, share, and comment, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.